What's going on, people? Welcome back to 888 Sports Football Friday Live. My name is Hugh Izzy, and this week I'm joined by our resident writer Dion Fanning, former Aberdeen, Barnsley and Sunderland goalkeeper and goalkeeping coach David Priest, and of course our main man on social, Richie. How's it going, lads?
Thank you very much, Hugh. Of course, we want you to get involved as much as possible today across Facebook and across Twitter, and we're going to launch another vote today, probably our most controversial, although I think I know what the outcome is going to be. We want to know who has been the biggest flop, biggest disappointment this so far in the Premier League season. So if you're watching on Facebook, hit the like button if you think it's Manchester United's record signing, Paul Pogba. The love button for West Ham's one-away midfielder Dimitri Payet. The laughing face for Leicester's Player of the Year last season, but done very little this season, Riyad Mahrez. And a sad face for Manchester City's calamity goalkeeper, Claudio Bravo. If you're involved on Twitter, simply comment one of those names, Pogba, Payet, Mahrez or Bravo, using the hashtag 888SportFFL, and of course get those questions and those comments into us. Hugh?
Just on touching on one or two of those players themselves, Dimitri Payet, subject of initially a £19 million and a £20 million bid from Marseille, who it would appear now have backed out of that deal and aren't that interested. If anything, West Ham asking for too much. But then I'm hearing other breaking news in that they are going to be going back in with a €30 million offer. They're quite serious about bringing the guy home. He doesn't seem to be that happy at the club. And more in that, Diego Costa as well, who's been the subject of an outlandish bid from China, is now going to be available for the game against Hull City this weekend. Quick thoughts?
Possibly got a new contract in the
Indeed,
offing.
that's just exactly what I was thinking.
It's amazing how back pain can clear up very quickly.
Indeed, it really is. Things can change very quickly in football, but one thing that doesn't change is that football is basically full of personalities, full of charisma, and sometimes full of arrogance as well. And there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and it was Muhammad Ali himself who said, it's not bragging if you can back it up. And there are some players that can back it up. I'd suggest that Zlatan Ibrahimovic is one of those. And some that just haven't been able to because they haven't really achieved that much in their career. And Memphis Depay, who is just moved to Lyon, that deal now being confirmed, is certainly one of those. There is something we're going to be touching on throughout this episode, but arrogance, confidence, such a fine line these days, and I'm not really sure whether that can be confused or is being confused. But anyway, before we get into that deeper, let's have a quick look at what's been going on in the world of football this week.
Another great week for Manchester United saw them top football's rich list for the first time in 13 years. No word yet on whether there'll be an open top bus or even where the bus will go. One thing's for sure though, Jose Mourinho loves Route 1. Man United's direct approach didn't go down well with Jurgen Klopp, and neither did the pre-game refreshments. Asking for a cup of coffee, Jurgen Klopp received a cup of tea. Manchester United sorted it out though. In Fergie time, they left it latte. They left it late. There was far better news for Liverpool though on Wednesday when Liverpool beat the mighty Plymouth Argyle in the FA Cup. Jurgen Klopp even received a giant Ginsters, although apparently it was flaky, half-baked and glazed over, much like Liverpool's defence. A massive happy birthday to Pep Guardiola, who celebrated his 46th birthday this week by taking some of his squad to the cinema. His squad really wanted to see a sci-fi thriller starring Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, but Pep Guardiola refused, insisting that he'd already seen some overpaid passengers doing nothing in space for 90 minutes against Everton. Speaking of Oscar-worthy performances, the FA are finally going to bring in retrospective bans for players that dive. And in completely unrelated news, Ashley Young is apparently linked with a big money move to China. Let's hope he enjoys that trip.
Some cliche stuff there, Richie. I'm proud of you, son, but I know you can do better than that. I would say that some of the talking points from that are certainly controversial ones. Long ball tactics, FA Cup shocks, Pep Guardiola being found out and possibly not as great, or not being as held as great regard as everyone did initially when he came on board. What are your thoughts on, let's start with the FA Cup.
For me this week, I went to see Lincoln play Ipswich.
Massive shock.
Yeah, it washed to me actually. I mean, they outplayed Ipswich over 180 minutes. They were well deserved the win, and I think that looking at Ipswich Town, I think Mick McCarthy's got a bit of a job in his hands to rescue things. Because even though I was surprised to even see that they were still mid-table, because I thought that I've seen a lot of teams this season and they're possibly the worst I've
The
seen
worst
so
of
far.
the lot. That's saying something.
Well, it is, and they deserve to get beat from Lincoln. On the other hand, Lincoln were superb. Outplayed them, like I said, over 2 games, and they're going to be worthy adversaries for Brighton.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with smaller teams often do like raise their game when it comes to playing a big fixtures? They know there's a lot at stake financially, in both terms of finances, also that other clubs will be looking at their players. You know, it's a chance for them to really get out of where they are.
Yeah, there is that, but I mean, Lincoln played very well. You know, there's no getting away from it. And Mick McCarthy paid them the biggest compliment ever by playing 3 at the back to cope with the threat of Matt Reid and Theo Robinson up front. And I think that, like I said, you see it's a shock, but Lincoln are playing very well this season. And you know, the difference between the leagues is getting smaller and smaller. Having said that, though, Ipswich shouldn't be getting beat by a team 3 leagues below them.
Indeed, they shouldn't. Pretty embarrassing stuff. Dion, Liverpool, and let's touch on that United game, for example, the long ball tactics that everyone was arguing about. And I don't really think that it was something that surprised many, because the midfield was so congested. There was such a battle going on between both sides. They felt they had to bypass. Do you think that Klopp has really done himself any favours?
Well, it's always interesting how agitated people get when the term long ball is used. Immediately, right. It's like some great insult has been thrown out there, like you've insulted somebody's mother or something. And it's a tactic in football. Now, for Manchester United, you know, who are already sort of harking back to the Alex Ferguson era all the time, it's a different question. It's like, is this the way Manchester United want to play? There was a lot of stuff in the build-up to the game about how Jose Mourinho had got the spirit back at the club, you know, the way they played against Middlesbrough when they came from behind, that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about the Manchester United way, if it matters, you might think that Marcus Rashford should come off the bench rather than Fellaini at that stage in the game. I think what happened was Liverpool showed up the weakness of United's midfield, and maybe Mourinho felt he had no option but to go long and bring on and go long to Zlatan and then bring Fellaini on as he looked for an equaliser. And in the circumstances in the game, you might say it was justified, and they got an equaliser, so maybe it was justified. But I think with Mourinho, there are no circumstances in which he wouldn't think that was the best way of doing it. That's the problem with Mourinho. That's his solution for everything.
I mean, that's pretty harsh, I reckon.
Well,
if only because
it's harsh, except if you look back on his entire career.
People look down at Van Gaal because he was doing something similar. Fellaini is an incredibly effective player, and maybe, you know,
but why is it
not
harsh?
the way that United want to be viewed.
I haven't made any. I've just said that's the way he's going to play. I haven't made any judgment about it. I've just said that's the way he's always going to play. You're the one who's interpreted it as a harsh statement.
Okay, all right. Maybe that's my misinterpretation, but I will say this much: I found it pretty ironic that Klopp was saying that Mourinho was the one who was playing the long ball when, during his time at Dortmund, the only way that he found himself able to beat Pep Guardiola's Bayern was by playing the long ball.
I think totally right what Dion said, and I think I don't like people being sniffy about playing long balls, because I think football's cyclical now. It's almost that we've exhausted all the tactics and all the formations, so now all we're doing with tactics to come up against what other people are doing. So if somebody's doing the high press, then the answer to that is to stretch them and go longer, just create a bit more space, and that's all they're doing. They're just finding a remedy to other people's tactics, and that's what this is with United. Plus, they've got the players to do it, so why not?
Richie, what's going on social?
Well, speaking of Fellaini, apparently you are Fellaini and Mahrez's love child, according to James Bolton. Loads of people getting involved in our vote, which is who's been the biggest flop in the Premier League so far this season. If you're involved on Facebook, hit the like button for Pogba, love button for Payet, laughing face for Mahrez, or the sad face for Claudio Bravo. We have had loads of people getting involved in that, including one comment saying Bravo is a disgrace to goalkeepers, and Sandy Rogers, John Stones, without a doubt the most overrated player. Back to you, Hugh.
Now, after last week's drubbing is the only word that I can really think of, at the hands of Everton, a 4-0 thrashing where they were exposed all over the place, Bravo himself being one whose fingers were pointed at. Our own Dion here sat down in a calm, quiet room to give us his thoughts on Pep Guardiola and his time in the Premier League so far.
Pep Guardiola arrived in Manchester a couple of months after the Brexit vote. The The glee with which his struggles have been received in England has been seen by some as another example of the mistrust of the elites which appears to have swept the country. After all, who is more sophisticated than Pep? His interests extend far beyond football. When he left Barcelona, he took a sabbatical in New York. A team bonding session for the players this week involved Pep taking them to see La La Land. He is friends with chess grandmasters and film directors. I'm sure he eats quinoa and drinks flat whites. He is the metropolitan elite. But maybe Pep represents something else. Maybe his struggles at Manchester City contain another lesson for Brexit. Beware of the ideologues. Remember those pictures of Michael Gove and Boris Johnson looking miserable the morning after the voters had taken the country back? Think then of Pep. Poor beleaguered Pep. After Manchester City had beaten Burnley and he had to face the interviewers who wanted to know his thoughts. Right now, Pep appears tortured by his ideology and the lengths he has to go to defend it. Pep's vision is a truly seductive one, and we have all seen it at its most glorious. Like the extreme Brexiteers, Pep doesn't want a pragmatic arrangement. He has a vision and he demands that it's realised. But can Pep return to that world again? Can he get his country back when he doesn't have Messi, Xavi or Iniesta to deliver it? He removed Joe Hart and has relied on players like Claudio Bravo and John Stones to implement his vision. He has remained true to his principles, and so far they've failed. We know how glorious it could be if Pep could create a utopia in Manchester. But is it asking for too much? And in wanting too much, will Pep destroy it all?
Drastic changes needed, maybe some signings needed, maybe a whole new defence needed. What are your thoughts, David?
Well, you mentioned Bravo earlier on, and I think it's not just down to him; it's down to his defence as well. They've struggled badly. You look at Pep. I think he's come here and he's been very protective of his philosophy. He's hearing a lot of voices, a lot of people, and reading a lot of things about people saying, well, he should compromise. He needs to change his philosophy. He needs to, but the Cruyff in him won't let him do that. He
will. There's only one way.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? He will succeed in the end. I've no doubt about that. I was a little bit surprised his reaction from the criticism and that he would bite back at people. But at the same time, pressure does strange things to you, and the will to win that he has, it's bound to have an effect on him. He is a winner, and he's not used to things going this way, and I think it's hurting him.
Just had a question from Mike Wright on this. What suddenly went wrong? Manchester City obviously made a really, really good start to the season, so where did it all go wrong and what happened?
Well, I don't know if it did all suddenly go wrong. I think part of the problem was they started better than probably Manchester City are at the moment. I think there was a lot needed to be done at the club. And that's been forgotten about, especially because they started with 10 straight wins. Yeah. But the club needed so much done to it. I think Pep came in, and some of the things he did were with the intention of making the statements of a strong manager, like getting rid of Joe Hart. That was a kind of a statement of intent. As much as people say it was about philosophy, it was also about I'm in control of this club now.
It's also given press and those who have anything to say against him more ammunition, because it was a massive two fingers up to basically the English game, as it were. You've got an English international who's like a stalwart of the club.
But why is England's game so insecure that it needs, the England goalkeeper is said to kind of be sort of represent the entire English game. He got rid of a goalkeeper. Maybe maybe there was a bit of a statement, as managers like to do, and if he hadn't done it, you could be saying a bit like David Moyes at United, when he probably should have made some sort of strong decisions when he first went into the club and got some players out of the dressing room. You might be saying, well, why isn't Pep being stronger? I think that dressing room, and I think that has aged together. I think it needs to be changed, and I think that's the biggest thing that's been overlooked. I think Pep has made huge mistakes. I think he's Bravo has been a mistake, Stones hasn't worked out, but I think the problems at City predate him, and
right. He inherited a mess, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You've got to think, like, when he was at Barcelona, he had prime Eric Abidal, Puyol, the experience, and best right back in the world, and Alves at the time, Piqué in his prime, then at Bayern the same with Alaba, Boateng, Lahm, Neuer. Now he's working with bang average guys in comparison. John Stones, who should probably be learning from someone who isn't making similar mistakes to what he's liable to do all the time. looks like a great player, I think. Certainly comfortable on the ball as much as you'd want a Pep Guardiola defender to be, but Bravo is the one I want to focus on for a second, because the guy doesn't seem to be able to make saves right now, let alone look comfortable with the ball at his feet, which was what we were all sold was the dream with him.
Well, do you know what? I'll start with one thing. He's a much better goalkeeper than he's performing at the minute and that he's showing at the minute.
Right. He looks to be when he plays internationally anyway.
Yeah, and sort of, kind of ironically, the only time he's looked himself, or the player that he was at Barcelona, was when they played Barcelona at the Nou Camp, and he played like that for an hour.
Right, yeah.
And it was actually that confidence that was coming back to him that got him sent off when he came out the box and gave the ball away, and he got the red card. But I've spoke to people who've watched him a lot over the last couple of seasons at Barcelona, and even they've come back and said that, well, they didn't think he was more than average with his feet. It was a lot to do with the positions that other players take on the pitch. That when he gets the ball, they know where to be. They're helping him a lot more. And I think that...
looking at that Everton game, Stones, Otamendi, they were all playing him under more pressure by being just awkwardly spaced all the time. Within 2 minutes, you could see that Everton were all over them. Lukaku, Mireles, Baines even. Everyone pressing super, super high, and they kind of played into their hands.
Well, that's it. They've been used to balls going back to Joe Hartney, them hitting it first time or taking a touch and claiming it long. And I think that's what Pellegrini wanted. He didn't want them to play around at the back. Now they're changing it, and they're just getting used to that now. And you've got to give credit to the other sides as well. It's not just about Manchester City playing bad. They are giving up chances. They are making mistakes. Claudio Bravo isn't saving shots that he should be saving. But at the same time, you've got to give credit to the other sides. They're spotting weaknesses and exploiting them.
Question just come in from Ed Stanley. Is this the toughest managerial job? Is this his toughest managerial job? And does it prove that the Premier League is the most competitive league in the world?
No, I don't think the two are connected. It's the toughest job because Manchester City aren't as strong as Barcelona or Bayern were when he went in there. And I think, and the other thing, and going back to the video, is the vision Pep has, and this is the thing that it's tough for him to compromise on, because when it's at it, when you've seen that, when you've had that kind of Eden, when things have been so beautiful, it's hard not to think that's what I want to aspire to all the time, to have. And he did it. People say, oh, he had Messi, he had Xavi, he had Iniesta. I said it, but people, me being one of them. But he also did it at Bayern. At times he did it at Bayern. He got them to play in this way. And we all know that thing about a Pep side when it's like in full flow. There's something incredible about watching the way the players move about, the interchange of players, the ideas he has for what he wants them to do, and like his vision is extraordinary when he gets it right. But the problem is at the moment that he doesn't have the players to do it. He's missing key midfielders. Like Gundogan being injured is a huge blow to him, and how he gets from where he is now to where he wants to be is going to be a real test unless he can, if he's going to refuse to compromise.
I think for one time you can now say that it's not an English football problem, because they've got Pep Guardiola as manager. There's not many England players in that team now, so it's not sort of an English football problem. Maybe it's English football's coming out of this well because it's all foreign players that are not grasping his philosophy. Now you can talk about the standard of the play. They're not the same as Barcelona and Bayern, but that'll come because I'm sure they'll bring whoever they need in the summer.
I think people forget as well that he was kind of exposed in the Champions League with Bayern as well, on the counter especially. So could be like similar traits happening, and he's kind of neglecting the defence, especially without the quality of player that he's going to need.
Well, Bayern is kind of this great sort of debate about like whether he was a success or not, because he didn't win the Champions League. They got knocked out before the final, but people would still say, oh, he did so much while he was there. He kind of revolutionised the club. They made them think differently about football. But you still can't say he was a great success, even though there were moments when they looked an astonishing side. And I agree with you, like he did get found out. People, the pro Pep argument would be they're knockout matches. Things can happen in knockout games, but until he does it again, there will always be people who say it was Messi, it was Xavi, it was Iniesta. Now I always think that, like, of course you're going to be better if you've got like 3 of the greatest players in the history of the game. Like I don't know how it's Pep's fault that he once managed a team that had 3 of the greatest players in the game. Like he can't go around apologising for that.
Yeah. Now, moving on, Manchester City are trying their best to stake a claim on the future of football by paying Southend United a record fee for a 13-year-old. Finley Burns is a guy that they've paid £175,000 for. Too young, too early? It's a debate that I'm keen to get into here, something that you've experienced in your playing career. Players do get some quite astounding offers these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's nothing new really. I mean, one good aspect of this is that the clubs are being remunerated. They are getting the money for these kids, whereas in the past there was loopholes. I mean, working at a club that was outside of the league, at Lincoln, we suffered because teams from Premier League, likes of Leicester and Derby, who were close by, they could come and take those kids without any compensation at all. So at least there's some good coming out of it.
Less taking advantage of
players.
Yeah,
exactly, yeah. But at the same time, it's something that's always happened, even sort of 25 years ago when I first started out. You're getting young players who, because they weren't able to offer the clubs or the players money, they did it in other ways. And now one of my friends went out to Nottingham Forest, and Forest actually bought his father a pub, so his family could move down. So he had a job. His son had a 5-year contract from 15 to 20, and so they got around it that way.
Crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely madness.
But it's a little bit different. But like I said, it's going to happen. You know, back then you'll pay £10,000-20,000 for a player. The price for players has gone up, so that for a 13-year-old, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So I mean, they must have, they're putting hanging their hat on him that he's going to be a good player. But at the same time, what's that money to Manchester City?
It's pittance.
Yeah,
absolute
exactly.
Peanuts. Yeah. We're talking about nothing. A fee could rise to £250,000 if he achieves certain things. But Dion, what are your thoughts on this? Youngsters who possibly maybe put too much pressure on them by having these big price tags put there.
Well, I think that's people always, especially now when there's so much money. But as David said, there's always been versions of this, or there's been kind of ways people would entice families and players in the past. And now that there's so much money, people think this is the downfall of players. That they're getting too much too soon. But they kind of forget that young players have always not made it. Most young players won't make it. It's got harder, but I would say it's got harder as well because 30 years ago, your competition, if you're an English player, a young English player, your competition came from players in England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. Now it comes from, if you're 14, it comes from around the world. So it's getting harder and harder to make it. Money.
And of course, there's so much more money in the game.
Well, there's so much money, but I don't know if that's necessary. Maybe it's very hard, and it seems logical to say that if you're getting, I know clubs are paying players at 16, 17, 6-7 grand a week. You would think, right, that's going to affect your motivation and your desire to actually really make it because you already think you've made it. But there was always, it's always really hard. Most young players don't make it. All these players throughout history, young people have found a way of kind of messing up their opportunities. That's kind of that's part of the deal of being a 16-year-old. I think you kind of mess things up.
And that links to a very, very good question from Ruth Bizzle Nichols, who's got involved saying, should there be wage caps and demand caps for players under the age of, say, 18 or 21?
Well, I think Liverpool tried to bring it in, didn't the club was talking about
Manchester United, all of their under 18s have to wear black boots, for example.
Right now, this week's How Hard is coming from one of the nicest guys on YouTube, Mr. Oakley Fish. Let's see how he got on. Hope he did all the YouTubers around me. I'm very proud.
YouTuber Oakley is with me to take on the How Hard Challenge. Now tell the people where you made your footballing debut.
Debuted at Wembley actually. Retired immediately after.
Where are you going to rank?
As long as I'm not bottom, I'll be happy.
There you go, it's yours.
Let's do it, man.
Okay, Oakley representing every YouTuber ever.
Oh no.
That's a good start. That was 47 miles an hour.
No, you're kidding me.
Attempt number 1, joint bottom.
Joint bottom. You know what the worst thing about it is? I actually thought I fired that.
Oh, hard and low, 49.
49. All right, so we're not bottom. So that's
Not bottom.
So we're not the bottom.
And you're an Arsenal fan.
I am an Arsenal fan, man.
So let's channel who? Thierry Henry? Dennis Bergkamp?
I don't know if I want to get them involved in this, man. I don't know if I want to bring their names to the mud.
Nicholas Bentner?
There you go.
That's a nice strike.
I think that was bad. That was the worst of the lot, I think. Be gentle with the info, please.
53.
53, gone up. For anyone else that's coming onto this series, I'll give you some advice. Don't rock these trainers. Do not go with them. Steel cap boots, ideal.
Oakley representing every single YouTuber out there in YouTube land. How do you think you got on?
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to everyone that's on YouTube.
You were aiming high, but not wanting to come low.
Yes.
You got 53 miles an hour.
That's decent. That's decent
Not
enough.
bad.
Come back with like Air Force One, some football boots. I'm going to train,
And that will
I'll
make
come top 5.
all the difference.
It will.
Very much for
Cheers for having me, mate. That was good fun. Good fun.
I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm proud of you, son. I'm proud of you, all right? If you are watching, then we'll talk about this another time, okay?
Representing all of those YouTubers out there.
Indeed, and social media is really changing the way that we look at certain things. I guess the numbers that some of these guys are pulling in are absolutely astronomical, and it's difficult to ignore. And football in itself has been changed a little bit by this, or at least is on the way to being changed a bit by this.
Absolutely, we've seen the Pogba hashtag, which has been the source of a lot of fun.
Indeed, right? Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us your thoughts on that Pogba hashtag on social if you are watching as well, because I'm not going to lie, I've got my own perspective on this, but we'll leave that for another second. YouTube-wise, there have been some incredible things done by some of these YouTube guys as far as the football goes. Wembley Cup and Wembley Cup Part 2, the creator of which is Spencer Owen, pulled in some incredible numbers, more so than the Champions League final did on YouTube when it was live streamed, which is just sensational. Sidemen did a similar thing where they had a game streamed from St Mary's that pulled in over 500,000 concurrent views. Do you think, like,
I love the way you're talking to those. That you're just
well, I'm
ignoring us. Hold on
you,
a second. Yeah,
because
I know Uncle Fish. I know these guys. Mr. Fish. I feel like one of those judges who's like never heard of Gaza or Kim Kardashian or something.
It's time to switch on.
I'm on. I'm ready to go.
They're really making a name for themselves. I mean, the fact that he's there and you've never heard of him and he's involved in the show is evidence of that in itself. However,
it's my fault as well. I'm not saying.
Look, man. Just some of us.
I'm always willing to learn. I'm teachable.
Well, that's cracking, and I suppose you've got to stay in touch now, and it's harder than ever to stay in touch with what the kids are into these days. But,
David?
Do you know what? I mean, our probably wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't for social media, for Twitter.
There you go.
It's been an avenue for me to start writing and then start writing for other people and put my opinions on Twitter. So
it's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. It's been great for me, and I think, you look at all the is it the F2 the guys who do all the skills on football skills on YouTube, they're great because they're encouraging young kids to go out there and film themselves in a park, and whether they're trying to knuckleball in the top corner or they're trying to hit the crossbar, it's encouraging people to get out there.
That's it. Go and play the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful stuff. Richie, so that's what's been going on.
Yeah,
on
so
social?
far a ton of you are getting involved in our vote, who is the biggest flop of the Premier League so far. Details are on the screen if you want to get involved. And we have had Robert Savage has got involved saying surely John Stones is the biggest flop of the season at £50 million. Pogba hasn't been terrible, just massively overpriced, and I hate United. Plenty of people saying John Stones, and one person got involved saying Mesut Ozil as well. Interesting.
Oh, controversial. I love the way you just dipped that one in there.
Had to.
Now, Ozil, is he possibly guilty of being slightly arrogant? We were talking about at the beginning this being a running theme throughout the show, and how there is a real fine line between confidence and arrogance. And for me, he is one of these players who has incredible ability, but sometimes is probably a little bit reliant on what he has done previously in his career, even as soon as the game beforehand. Someone that doesn't seem to have that kind of lackadaisical approach to his game is Alexis Sanchez. It's kind of almost like the antithesis of each other in the way that they approach the game. Not that that's something that I think either needs to be criticised for as much as anything, but with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who I know that you've got some experience with, he is often called arrogant, but because he has so much to back it up with, I'm firmly in his favour and on his side in saying that it's probably more confidence.
Yeah, and it was justified in his case. I mean, but it'd been from a young age that he had such a belief in himself. And sometimes when you're younger, that can be like sort of a self-defense mechanism, a bit of bravado that you're protecting yourself, and you know, it's just immaturity. But with him, it was, yeah, it was mixed with pure talent as well. I mean, I played against him a couple of times in my career, and the first time was when he was at Ajax. We played against him.
Say that, just so blasé.
Well, you know, that's because I've told this story that many times. That's why, yeah. But yeah, when I was with Aberdeen, we went to a winter break out in and I think it was in Portugal, and we played against Ajax. And this team had Wesley Sneijder, Christian Chivu, Van der Vaart. Wow. It was just Mido played up front as well when he was fit and firing. But it was just 15, 16 players are just pure class that have went on to great things. And he played, he started the game, scored 2 goals in the first 20 minutes, almost, it was so much ease, it was embarrassing. And one of our defenders, Russell Anderson, the captain of Aberdeen, took it into his own hands to try and stop him just before half time. And just went through the back of him and tried to literally stop him playing, you know. And Zlatan just dusted himself down, got up, he walked over the side of the pitch, and as he walked past everyone, he just went, well, I won't say the words, but he says, "You're rubbish, you're rubbish, you're rubbish," and just walked off the pitch. And then they had to make a substitution for him, and Mido came on, but he was just, it was, even just watching it, it didn't even seem disrespectful at the time because you could see how good he was, you know.
Yeah. I mean, he scored some incredible goals while he was at Ajax. Some would say that was probably, well, possibly even him at his very peak.
Oh, do you know what? Even like I said, even then, you didn't feel it was disrespectful because he just looked that good.
Dion, tell us quickly about your thoughts on Zlatan and perhaps Pogba as well, and whether you think that there is possibly an air of arrogance about Pogba, or whether even it might be a great signing having Zlatan there so that he can bring Pogba back down to earth.
I think the thing about Zlatan is that even on a game like Sunday against Liverpool, when he doesn't play particularly well, he gets that goal, which kind of, and he brings that authority to the way he even gets the goal. Like, you know, you saw that very few players could have scored that goal. You know, with the power he got in the header from the angle he was at. And it just feeds into the idea of Zlatan, which is kind of key to him. And then it's a strange thing because, you know, you look at someone like Pogba who has all the kind of image and does all this stuff, but actually it's a burden for him right now. Whereas the stuff that comes along with Ibrahimovic kind of lays out a kind of a trail for him before he even comes onto the pitch, because people feel there's sort of this presence. A bit like Cantona, but Cantona had the same thing. Cantona had a lot of games where he didn't do a lot, but then he'd get a goal and he'd kind of justify everything.
It's quite interesting that as well, because obviously number 7 there, you've got the kind of emulation of, or at least the perceived emulation of a Cristiano Ronaldo in a 7, and then Memphis Depay steps into the role, or at least into the shirt, but maybe not so well into the role. And just didn't either get much of a chance or didn't prove himself to be enough of a success to warrant staying. He's now gone to Lyon. He is someone that comes across, to me at least, slightly overly confident. And like you said before, it's quite interesting that it may well be due to insecurity, but it doesn't strike me as that initially, I have to say.
No, and I think what Jose Mourinho came out today and sort of backed Depay up.
He did back him, yeah.
And said that it's not because he didn't work hard or that he wasn't committed and he wasn't dedicated to his craft. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and I think that it could be the best thing for him just to go away, take himself out the spotlight a little bit. And with young guys, okay, people can say they put themselves up there to be criticised when they're doing all these adverts, they're dancing like Pogba and or they're very visible on social media, but at the same time, you know, the young guys, and I think we forget about that. They're being taken out of a comfort zone environment, and they're put in somewhere strange, and it does take time to adjust. I mean, I remember myself, you know, I moving to Aberdeen. 1 minute you're training with teammates you've been for a couple of years. The next minute you're sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, thinking, "Well, what just happened now?"
You have to kind of kill time as well. You're in a strange place, and you've got.
Well, I mean, there's ways of killing time though, and smoking hubbly bubblies just probably doesn't do him any favours, you know.
But you know, the stuff then that comes out about how, you know, Van Gaal and Giggs had talks with, you know, talked to him and tried to get his head right, and then he went out and, you know, he'd come into training 2 weeks later driving a Rolls Royce, and this is seen again as the sort of the feckless kind of our young player who hasn't really grasped it. But is that really, like, you know, everyone at Manchester United is driving, you know, big cars. It's not really the cause of why he failed. Like, you know, Mourinho comes out and says he trains hard, but when it's not working for you, people look at the big car, they look at Instagram, they look at all this other stuff and say, oh, this is a guy who isn't really concentrated, and he doesn't do it. He doesn't behave in the way that we've expected great football men, the proper football men, to behave. And does it really matter?
Does it really matter? Now, one thing that does matter is that we get another world exclusive from some of the biggest names and pundits in the world of football today. Let's have a look and see what these guys have to say.
We struggle against smaller sides. You know, the West Hams, the Burnleys, the Stoke Cities, the Liverpools.
What are you talking about, a small club?
Sorry, cut across you, mate, but we've got Jurgen Klopp here right now. Did you and Jose make amends after the game?
For sure, we had some tea in this moment, you know, but there was no coffee, which was very frustrating too, you know, but typical Jose, you know.
And how was that?
The tea was very weak and boring, just like his team and his style of play, of course, for sure.
So, getting on to Manchester City, you know, a 4-0 to at Goodison, you know, it was a bit of a shocker. It was a wonderful result for everyone. Everton, I mean, serious questions need to be asked of Guardiola's tactics.
We actually caught up with Pep earlier today, and this is what he had to say. So who's to blame for this current run of form, Pep?
It's my fault. It's my fault. Shoot the manager. Yeah, no, my fault.
But you don't seem very happy, Pep.
No, I'm very happy. Oh, more than you believe. Happy New Year. It's so cold. It's so cold.
So, what you make of that, Gary?
Right, we roll the clip back, right? Stop it here. Look at this, right? He's sweating, his eyes are welling up. Then when you play it forward, there's the tears, right? I'm no expert, right? But I think he's starting to feel the pressure. I think he knows he's f***ed.
Well, thanks for that, Gary. That was great, you know, and that's all we have time for tonight. See you all next week, folks.
Managers under pressure, left, right and centre, especially in the Premier League. And something interesting that we can talk about here is whether or not people have short-term memories or whether they're just hypocrites everywhere. I guess Harry Redknapp in '97 and Bilic nowadays, it's almost like a complete role reversal in the fact that Payet wants to leave now. He's going to possibly a bigger club in Marseille, I think undoubtedly a bigger club at the moment, where Bilic himself was looking for a move in '97 to Everton. Complete role reversal. Give us your thoughts, Dion.
Well, I think football is based on short-term memory. You know, like fans, everyone has short-term memory. Everybody just forgets about whatever is inconvenient to forget about at any given moment. And you know, the Bilic quotes came out, and it's one of those ones that exposes the whole kind of nonsense around loyalty and all these.
It doesn't exist anymore in football.
But it doesn't.
Right?
But it shouldn't exist because you know clubs aren't any more loyal.
It shouldn't exist.
Well, no, it shouldn't exist in the way we talk about it. I hate to break it to you.
I'm done.
I think
it's over. Stay. Don't. You know, game's gone.
It's so much easier for managers to play the loyalty card. I think simply because financially, you know, if they get the sack, they get compensation. They get they get paid up. So it's easy for them to sit and say, "Oh, well, I stayed in my job until I was told otherwise." Yeah. But they still get their money anyway.
But Bilic said what he said. If Bilic came out and actually said what he probably knows to be the truth, like this is how the game works, this is what happens, he'd have West Ham fans on his back. So
and what do you think that is, though? What do you think the truth is in that, then?
Well, I think the truth is that everybody within football knows that this is how it works. People don't. They understand that if there are contracts, if clubs come in and there's another offer and you're interested in taking that offer, you take it.
So should people be panicking then when clubs from China come in with these £500,000 a week deals for the likes of Diego Costa?
Well, who should be panicking? I don't think Diego Costa should be panicking. I think he should be very happy.
I mean, well, the European footballing elite.
Yeah, they should be concerned about it. But what's the Premier League? How's the Premier League been built? By offering huge amount of money to players.
Again, so we're back to this hypocrisy thing.
Well, it's not hypocrisy. It's just.
Well, it kind of is if you're looking at the likes of Chelsea, who spent ridiculous amounts of money since Abramovich came.
I wrote about this on Joe last week about Costa, and I talked about Tom Finney, who was hailed as a great one-club man, and when he died, his time was compared to the modern football and how it had all gone wrong. Tom Finney wanted to go to an Italian club when he was a player, and he was told by his chairman, "You're not going." Players in those days had no power. Their loyalty was used to keep them in their place. So players today get the one good thing, the best thing about football today is that the people who bring people to games are rewarded for it. It doesn't go somewhere else. It goes to the people who the public have paid to come and see. Now you can argue as much as you like about whether they get paid too much. I don't think they get paid too much, because if they get paid as much as people are prepared to pay them.
But the simple thing is, though, I know people accuse footballers, might accuse Diego Costa of using this Chinese interest to get himself a better contract. Right. That might be true, but at the same time, clubs will take advantage of players if they know you're giving away all your bargaining chips. Really, if you tell a club, I'm 100%, I want to stay here, and there's no doubt whatsoever, you will not get the best deal for you or the best deal out of that club. Yeah. They will play on that that you want security, that you're happy where you are. They will play on that, and they will pay you or offer you a deal less than what they will bring somebody else in on.
That's why West Ham can't have done themselves any favours by coming out and saying.
But I think just think they've getting the first punch in first,
right?
And trying to put the pressure on Payet that he is this sort of don't know.
When a Chinese club came in for Oscar, and bought Oscar, Chinese fans or Chelsea fans were delighted. They were like, "Look at this! We're getting so much money for this guy who isn't even in our first team." Yeah. If Oscar had said, "I don't want to go to China. I don't want you to take this money from me," would Chelsea fans have said, "Oh, that's great. He's showing great loyalty"? I would say, "Hold on a second. This guy isn't in our first team. There's a club coming here who's going to give us a hell of a lot of money to get him off our wage bill, and we can buy someone else." And now you're denying it. Or they say, "Great loyalty from Oscar." They were quite happy when the Chinese club came in at that stage.
Selective, hypocritical, and certainly forgetful. Richie, what's going on?
I have a question from the audience. I had to put my hand up because this chat is brilliant. Do you think the Bosman ruling was the beginning of the shift in power between player and club or manager? That's from Steve Atkins on Facebook. And also, what percentage of the blame for arrogance in football should be aimed at the agents as well?
110%. These guys are running football right now, and they're the only people that footballers seem to listen to, surely.
Yeah, well, I mean, the strange thing is that the agents who have the big players, they have the easiest jobs.
Oh. And they're making an absolute fortune.
They have the easiest jobs. It's the agents who lower down who are trying to get fix up players who don't have clubs or they're being released. Yeah. Those are the guys who earn their money. Yeah. The other guys, they're just negotiating fees. They're not. That's not work.
As well, like 2 or 3 agents who literally have like 40 players of the 40 of the biggest players as well, like Raiola, Mendes. These guys have like the names on that roster are just incredible, and they are absolutely milking it.
Yeah, but there are agents further down that are taking money off guys who are on a few £100 a week, and they're still taking the same percentages as the guys further up. And those percentages that are taken off them make a hell of a difference to those players because they're not getting paid as much money. And I think those are the agents that are more unscrupulous than those higher up.
Sorry, a quick word on the Bosman ruling as well, and if you think that was a shift in power?
Yeah, of course it was, but it just shifted the power more equally back away from the clubs and give a bit with the players. Since then, though, in the last 10 years, then it has gone the other way, and players can hold clubs to ransom.
I'm not sure that this is 100% facts. You have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Bosman ruling it's not in effect in MLS, and it's something that's, in my eyes, very controversial in that I agree it's definitely balanced the power out, or even the balance of power.
But is that because their registrations are held by the MLS?
Yeah, it's different. It's a different system. They
literally all in-house, and some people say it's kind of illegal the way that they're doing that.
Well, it's different because the Bosman ruling came in under EU law, so that was why it allowed that to happen. But the American sport is this strange thing where it's sort of socialized sport. You know, they have wage caps. They've only got designated players. They even out the players among you know, they've got drafts in the games, in the sports there, and they try and get a more equal balance among the teams.
Right, now, speaking of drafts, it would appear that I've been drafted in for this week's 888 Sport betting battle, because and you can see no money has been made at all for charity whatsoever. You're going to have to do better this week. In fact, I'm here to save the day, all right? All of the money that is being generated here is going to be going to charity, and 888 have kindly given us £10 each to choose a winner from this weekend's games. Can we have a look at the fixtures, please? So that I can make the correct choice. Who are you going to be going for this week, Dion?
I'm going for Spurs to beat Man City on Saturday evening.
That's a big one.
It is a big one.
That is a big one.
I'm never afraid to call it, Hugh.
Okay, now defensive frailties all over the place. I can see your reasoning there. Goalkeeper's having a bit of a nightmare. Fingers being pointed left, right, and centre. Spurs
are in form. They're the Chelsea result was a great win for them, and I think they kind of know what they're doing. They're very well organised. Pochettino's got them playing at the top of their game, and I think that they'll put more pressure on Pep.
Very interesting. What about you, David? Who are you going for?
Well, I went for Sunderland last week, and I almost feel like giving the £10 back because they were that bad. Should refund it, really. But I'm going to go for Everton at Palace.
Okay.
I think
Big Sam's not had the best start there.
No, he hasn't, and I know he's come out all guns blazing today, you know, back to his old self, but he just didn't get the feeling that he was the same when he came into Sunderland. He was all confident, and it spread throughout in the press conferences. Everyone could see that.
I think he may well have lost his spark there.
Well, I don't know. It was bound to give him a bit of a setback with the England job. What happened in the England job, right. and I do think it's taken him a little bit of a while to recover.
He also had a little moment abroad recently, on a personal level.
Well, I know he spent a bit of time abroad in Dubai and did a bit of work out there. But I think what he needs to do, I mean, he's coming to Crystal Palace and they've got a far better squad than when he came into Sunderland. Far better squad, and he has to. He must know himself that he's got a better chance than he did when he came into Sunderland.
I think
a far better chance.
The tough thing for Sam is that, you know, everyone it became such a joke, and in 67 days as England manager, everyone found it kind of hilarious, and there's something. It's very easy to laugh.
I didn't.
Did you not? Well, lots of people.
Do you know what? I really was disappointed.
That's what I was.
He would have been the first England manager to actually give us the identity that we needed, the identity we've been lacking for a long time, I reckon.
But I think it was so wounding what happened to him. Like, I think it's on a human level. I don't think that can happen to you, and you can come back with the same kind of vitality and life force that you had beforehand, because this was a job he wanted. Over something, and it was kind of a tragic. He's on a tragic figure, Sam, but it's as close as he's ever going to get to kind of tragedy, in that sense. In Big Sam's world, but it was he for what? I don't know why he lost. I still don't really understand why he lost his job.
They love throwing people under a bus around here, don't they? Richie, social, what's going on?
Hugh, you haven't given your tip.
Oh, my tip is actually going to be West Bromwich Albion to beat Sunderland, if only because I think West Brom have a cracking record against them, and also Sunderland don't seem to be able to get goals from anywhere apart from Defoe right now. So until they can start to spread them around a little bit, I've got no faith in the lads being able to get anywhere near to staying up. So yeah, West Brom for me, and we'll reap the rewards next week. Richie.
Lovely, thank you very much, Hugh. Thank you very much for your amazing comments. There have been so many, haven't been able to get through every single one, but I've picked a couple out regarding the biggest flop so far in the Premier League, especially this one, Awais Ace Sadiq. 6 haircuts, 6 goals, but we know he will come good though, surely. I'm assuming that's Paul Pogba. Andrew Clifton, what happens when a club sells a player that doesn't want to leave? Do we call the club unloyal? Good question. Edwin Hussey, yes, loyalty is dead. Every player has a price. And speaking of the biggest flop of the Premier League so far, the vote is in. So in 4th place, you voted Leicester City's awesome Algerian Riyad Mahrez the biggest flop of the season so far. In third place, West Ham's once away Dimitri Payet. In second place, Manchester City's calamity keeper, Claudio Bravo. And obviously, there can only be one winner or loser. In this case, you voted Paul Pogba, the world record signing for Manchester United, the biggest.
I can see the disgust strewn over your face.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that coming a mile away. Paul Pogba, biggest flop of the season.
For anyone who isn't aware, Richie is in-house Manchester United fan, so you've really stabbed him in the back with that one.
Don't hurt me if you see me on the street, please.
However, I'm going to back Pogba, right? If only because I think that was a one-off, especially over the last couple of months. I think he's been very impressive, and it was simply Klopp's
the price tag
plan.
is not his fault either.
It isn't, and neither is this whole marketing thing. The PR plan is, his social accounts won't be run by him. He's not doing all these music videos without someone else tagging him in along. Adidas have got him on a short straight. I wonder how much pressure is put on him because of this price tag, and potentially a top-class player. So
yeah, I think so. And he's still a young player. He's experienced for a young player. His time at Man United and at Juventus. But at the same time, he's starting to come to his game. He looks more natural now. Yeah, he had a bad game, but I think at the weekend. But I think what he's looked at, he's looked as if he feels the pressure. He looks very self-conscious, I think, at times, especially when he first came. And even in the first game of the Euros for France, he looked like a player who knew all the eyes were on him, and he looked very self-conscious. And I think that when he came to United, it was almost every time he got the ball, he thought it was going to be a 6-second vine. It was almost it was almost.
Wow, he went there.
But it was almost he had to do something. He had to do something special.
No, I agree.
Instead of being effective and moving the ball on and exactly.
Well.
Yeah, it was like he had to do something that was spectacular, and that can be with the price tag as well. That he's expecting more of himself as well.
I have to say, he often thinks that he has to do just one little bit too much, and that's to his own detriment, really. But as time goes on, especially considering that he's only recently found his role at Man United. They've moved him about a little bit. He's kind of getting used to where he is now, and I want to congratulate Klopp and the plan that he had in that Liverpool game for just hounding the guy out of it and making him nervous on that first touch, which isn't always perfect.
Well, handing him out of it, handing Carrick out of it, who's been important, for Pogba as well, since he started playing quite well. And I think I agree with you. I think he needs to kind of settle down, but I think the price tag. You say everyone knows. You say he doesn't, set the price tag, but it has a bearing and has an effect on players, and it has an effect on them too when they think they've got to be doing something special.
I think with we talk about Zlatan's arrogance, but at the same time, he's a model pro. Yeah. He is absolutely committed to what he's doing. He does everything right. You don't see any scandal about him. You don't see him falling out of nightclubs or any headlines about him. And you see Pogba is sort of latched onto him straight away at United. Yeah. And I think his influence off the field can be crucial to him.
Oh, I definitely think so. If anything, just a very shrewd coupling in the signing there. Right, we're going to wrap it up there. It's been a fantastic evening, afternoon even, and I've enjoyed myself immensely. I hope you have as well. Thank you for getting involved on social. You can follow us on the Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Facebook, obviously, if you've been watching us on there. Thank you very much to 888sport. This has been Football Friday Live. I've been Hugh Izzy. This has been Dion, David, and our main man on social, Richie. Again, thanks for joining us, lads. We'll be back next week with another. For now, though, it's out.